I'm a creative. And if I want people to trust that I actually wrote that book, then I believe in HI, human intelligence, instead of AI, artificial intelligence. And when people go to a conference and they get all excited about AI and then they say, I wrote my book yesterday. You did not write your book yesterday. AI wrote your book yesterday. If you put your book on something and you had nothing to do with creative, I believe that's out of integrity. If we, like yourself, if you're a creative, then let's go ahead and use HI to leverage our EEE, our experience, our epiphanies, and our expertise in a way that what we're adding is coming from us instead of an app.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Sam Horn with us. Sam is the CEO of the Intrigue agency. Her 3 TEDx Talks and 10 books, including Pop and Tung Fu, have been featured in the New York Times, on NPR, and presented to Intel, YPO, Accenture, Oracle, and NASA. I had the pleasure of hearing her speak at Genius Network recently, and I was blown away, as was everyone else in the audience. And I just knew I had to have her on the show. So here we are. Thank you for coming, Sam.
Oh, you bet. I can't wait to talk story and share some best practices with your audience.
Awesome. Well, first of all, I would love to understand a little bit more about your motivation for helping writers. You have this storied history of the Maui Writers Conference, and I think it was 17 years you did that for. You've been so instrumentally helpful to so many writers over the years. You've helped them become best-selling authors and get big speaking gigs and huge deals and so forth. So what motivates you to do that, and what got you started doing it?
I will always remember the very first year of our Maui Writers Conference. What CAN is to the film industry, we were to the publishing industry. We gave people from around the world an opportunity to jump the chain of command and pitch directly to decision makers. I mean, you could pitch your screenplay to Ron Howard. Where do you get a chance to do that, right? Here's what happened, though, is that first year is that a woman came out of her pitch session with tears in her eyes. And I went over, I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "I'm not okay. I just saw my dream go down the drain." And I said, "What happened?" She said, "I put my 300-page manuscript on the table. The editor took one look at it, said, 'I don't have time to read that. Tell me in 60 seconds what it's about and why someone would want to read it.'" And I talked to Bob Loomis later that night. I said, "Bob, what's going on?" He said, "Sam, we've seen thousands of proposals. We make up our mind in the first 60 seconds whether something is commercially viable." And Stephan, the next day I stood in the back of those pitches and I could predict who was getting a deal without hearing a word being said based on one thing. Guess what?
What?
The decision maker's eyebrows. Because see, if we're describing our startup or our marketing campaign or our business to someone and their eyebrows are crunched up, it means they're confused. And confused people don't say yes. Now, if their eyebrows don't move, it means they're unmoved or they've had Botox. Now, if their eyebrows are up, it means they're intrigued, they're curious, they're engaged, they want to know more, and it means we got what we care about in their mental door. So I am a woman on a mission about how to get people's eyebrows up for what we care about so they care about it too.
That's beautiful. And so what is a standout story of a particular author that you were instrumental in their success?
Okay. Now, Stephan, you know me and I take notes, right? It's after 17 years of Maui Writers Conference, our authors didn't agree on anything. I mean, Frank McCourt, Angela's Ashes would get up and say, "You have to write first thing in the morning." Pulitzer Prize winning humorist Dave Barry would get up and say, "I'm a night owl. I don't get going until 9. The only thing they agreed on was ink it when you think it. So if people, unless they're driving, if they'll get a piece of paper and put 3 columns on it, And in the first column, we'll talk about situations. It's like how to pitch or what to say in the first 60 seconds of a presentation or how to explain what you do in a way that those eyebrows go up. So we'll talk about a situation. In the middle column is what doesn't work. In fact, it's INFObesity. And in the right-hand column, we'll talk about what to say, what to do that actually helps instead of hurts. So shall we start with situation one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so number one, let's go ahead. And you just talked about what we can say, whether it's about a book or whether it's an idea or a startup or a product or a program. Sound good?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just say we want to get a yes to something we care about. In the middle, put explain. Guess what? We're not going to explain our idea, our startup, our book, because that's infobesity. So let me give a quick story and then we'll unpack it so that everyone watching, listening can be thinking about how to get a yes to what they care about in the first 60 seconds. Sound good?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So here's 90-second story. So you may know that I was the pitch coach for Springboard, which has helped entrepreneurs generate $27 billion in funding. So one of my Springboard clients, Kathleen Callender of PharmaJet, said, I've got good news and I've got bad news. I said, what's the good news? She said, I'm speaking in front of a room full of investors at the Paley Center in New York. I said, that's fantastic news. What's the bad news? She said, I only have 10 minutes and I'm going at 2:30 in the afternoon. I said, Kathleen, you don't have 10 minutes. You have
60 seconds.
60 seconds. So here's the 60-second opening we came up with that helped her win millions in funding. And she was Business Week's most promising social entrepreneur of that year. 60 seconds. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know there are 1.8 billion vaccinations given every year? Did you know up to a third of them are given with reused needles? Did you know we're spreading and perpetuating the very diseases we're trying to prevent? Imagine if there were a painless one-use needle for a fraction of the current cost. You don't have to imagine it. We're doing it. And she's off and running. Are your eyebrows up, Stephan?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is how she normally used to explain her idea or our book or our business or our product. She used to explain it by saying that PharmaJet was a medical delivery device for subcutaneous inoculations. It's a what? Look, confusion, right? No, here are 3 things you can do to ask instead of explain to get eyebrows up for what you care about. Step 1. What are 3 did you know questions with startling statistics you can introduce about the problem your book solves, or about the issue your program addresses, or about the need that your business meets? Now, where do you find these startling statistics? Just go online and put in what are startling statistics about the industry that you're in or the demographic that you're trying to reach. Up will come things even you don't know. And recency equals relevancy. And if you introduce something startling that's recent, even the most skeptical person is paying attention because they're smarter than they were a moment ago, right?
Yeah.
Step 2, use this word, imagine, because imagine pulls people out of their preoccupation. They're not distracted anymore. They're picturing your point. And when something complex becomes clear, do you know what we say?
Right.
Oh, I see now, right? So when we say imagine this and this and this, what are 3 benefits of your book? What are 3 advantages of your product? What are 3 deliverables of your organization? People are going, imagine this. Imagine it didn't have to cost that much. Imagine if you could do that in less time. Imagine if there were shortcuts that people are going, sounds good. Step 3, you don't have to imagine it. We're doing it. And now you come in with your precedents and your evidence, your cover endorsement for your book or a testimonial from a satisfied client. You do that in 60 seconds or less. You turn a monologue into a dialogue, infobesity into intrigue. Those eyebrows are up. You're off to a meaningful 2-way conversation.
Yeah, I love that. That's wonderful. So could you give an example of something that went off the rails besides that that 300 I was going to say pound, 300-page manuscript on the table that really turned off the acquisitions editor or whatever. Like, what would be an example of something that went horribly off the rails, and maybe unpack that a little bit?
Okay, so there was a guy named Wally who was in my nonfiction retreat, and he used to introduce himself by saying that he doused for whales. And Stephan, they thought he was one taco short of a combination plate. Said no one wanted anything to do with him, right? So in the situation above, we talked about how to turn infobesity into intrigue instead of explaining by asking with that, did you know? Here, what we're going to say is something is confusing. And in the middle, once again, is we just tell people what it is we do in a way that actually causes them to back away as fast as they can. And over on the right, link the unfamiliar to the familiar. So I said, all right, Wally, what you do actually is kind of like you listen, you put your sonar device down and like you listen to the whales talk and you interpret their language. And he said, yeah, that's what I do. And I said, what is that like with a twist? You know, who else talks to animals and interprets their language and so forth? It's like, well, you know, there was the movie, The Whale Whisperer. I mean, there was the movie, The Horse Whisperer, right? With Robert Redford. Oh, Wally, you're the whale whisperer. Because see, when you make the unfamiliar familiar, especially when you associate with something that was a critical and a commercial success, something that made a lot of money, now decision makers' eyebrows are up because the unknown has become it's become known in a favorable way that gets your foot in their mental door.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. What a powerful way to explain what you do in 2 words. I'm the whale whisperer. I like it. Yeah. So, how do you kind of go into an organization and help them to improve their systems, their communication styles, their messaging? Like, what's your process or framework?
What our process is, let's talk about the elevator speech, right? Because people say, so what do you do? Wah, 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 wah. At the end of 60 seconds, no one knows what we do. So I'll give you an example. And this was at Inc. 500. So what we did is just what you're talking about is how can an organization get across what they do in in a way that people actually get it and remember it and want to do business with it. So at Inc. 500, this was the top rated session. I mean, there was Seth Godin and Tim Ferriss and Tom Peters and Jim Collins. And yet everyone is asked this question and hardly anyone knows how to do it well. So here's Colleen. She was Entrepreneur of the Year for the state of Oklahoma. And I said, so what do you do? Wah, 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 wah. I tell you, Stephan, at the end of 60 seconds, no one in that room understood what she did. And she was the CEO. Now, imagine the lost opportunity cost, right? She's surrounded by the best entrepreneurs in the country. No one's going to walk up and continue the conversation. No one's going to propose a partnership. So once again, this matters. So here's the 4 steps. The first thing I said, all right, Colleen, what do you do that we can see or smell or taste or touch? Because see, we want to turn rhetoric into real world. And she said something about magnetic resonating imaging machines and so forth. And Stephan, my light bulb went off. I said, do you run the medical facilities that offer MRIs and CAT scans? She said, yes. I said, don't tell people that. Because if we tell people what we do, they go, oh, it's the end of the conversation. We don't want to end the conversation. We want to open the conversation. So first is think of what you do, not rhetoric, that's real world that people can see, smell, taste, or touch. Second step, ask a 3-part question. Do you know anyone, could be yourself, a friend, or a family member who's had an MRI or CAT scan? And she said, what's this about a 3-part question? I said, if you ask a one-part question, have you ever had a CAT scan or MRI? That's way too personal, right? People are backing up as fast as they can. We're putting baby in a corner. It's an interrogation. It's not a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Do you see how we're giving people options so they're in control of the conversation? Amy Poehler said, I get a little itchy if I don't have some kind of control. Well, everyone gets itchy. They get to go where they want to go. Plus, we just increase the likelihood that they're going to know someone who's familiar with what we do. So, second, do you know anyone, could be yourself, friend, family member, who's had an MRI or CAT scan? Third step, we put a sock in it. Most elevator speeches, are like interminable. They go on for minutes. We're holding the person hostage. With this method, we're like silent. We're listening 20 seconds in. So third step, listen to what they say. They may say, oh, well, I haven't had an MRI, but my daughter hurt her knee playing soccer. She had one. Fourth step, link what we do to what they just said. Oh, I run the medical facilities that offer MRIs like the one your daughter had when she hurt her knee playing soccer. Stephan, guess what happens? Oh, they get it. They remember it. They're more likely to act on it and say, oh, well, yeah, I've got a friend who needs one, etc. All because we made a connection in the first 60 seconds instead of giving a speech.
That's really good. So what is an example for you? How do you do it when you're in an elevator with somebody who is curious about what you do?
I love this. Stephan, number one is I don't have a script because a script could be completely irrelevant to the situation, right? Mm-hmm. And Eleanor Cliff said, we're all in a race to be relevant. So see, if I am at Joe Polish's Genius Network and someone asks what I do, I would ask them myself, what do they care about? What do people in this group want to do? And many of them either want to write a book or, like yourself, you've already published books. However, you're thinking about your next book, right?
Yeah.
So I would say something like, do you know anyone? Could be yourself, could be someone on your team, could be someone in your community. Do you see how I'm deliberately picking a demographic that would be relevant to this person I'm talking with? Mm-hmm. And then I would say, who wants to write a book or figure out their next book, right? Because that way we're getting the newbies, but I'm not insulting the intelligence of a multiple best-selling author who's saying, you're asking me if I want to write a book. I've written 10 bestsellers. So do you see how that is increasing the likelihood that whatever stage of their career they're at, this will be of interest to them? I put a sock in it. And, like yourself, you may say, oh, well, I'm working on a memoir. And we're often running on a mutually meaningful conversation because I asked instead of explained.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And so one thing I credited you for after your presentation at Genius Network, I was just so impressed by that, is you gave so many relevant quotes from just, I don't know, all the reading and research and life experience and everything that you've gone through. And most importantly to me, you credited each of the quotes. Every time you quoted, you said who it was from. And I've heard famous people not credit the people half the time. And they're giving whole frameworks sometimes, like these are the 5 questions, this is the 4-step process or whatever, and they don't mention the name of the person who came up with it. And that makes me really cringe when that happens, because it's not fair. And it's bad karma, in my opinion. So I just want to give you kudos again for that. And how do you manage to retain not only all those quotes, but all the sources at the same time?
First, thank you. And you and I are on a mission to be in integrity around this.
Yeah.
Because see, I didn't say that. They said that. They deserve credit. So both you and I really believe in referencing our sources. And it is not okay to take someone's proprietary framework or their 5 steps and put our name out of it. That's totally out of integrity. So yes, to crediting resources. I believe in riffing off quotes, riffing, just like a jazz musician will riff off chords to make new music. I think we can not riff off other people's IP if we credit it, attribute it, and if it's short, not their whole 5-step process, a one-liner, that's okay with attribution. So you asked how I remember them. I'm going to recommend everyone here that if you want a way to get people's eyebrows up, make your life your lab. When you hear something or see something that gets your eyebrows up, and once again, it's a one-liner. It's not their whole methodology, and it's not, a proprietary IP that is obviously crafted and we're lifting it and cutting and pasting it. That's not okay. A one-line insight. So if it gets our eyebrows up, here are 2 ways to remember it. Think about where you would use it in a presentation, or think about how you're going to reference it in a blog, because we're more likely to remember something if we have context and application. Not, oh, that's a great quote. No, I'm speaking to this room, in a week, and this would be relevant and appropriate for them, and they will not have heard it before. And now it's really important to repeat it in the rhythm, because when you put it in a beat, you make it easy to repeat. When you put it in a beat, you make it easy to repeat. So how I remember them is like you could give me a topic and I could probably come up with a quote. If you say something about time, I would probably say, well, Richard Branson said, time is the new money. Now I will riff off that with a credit by saying, you know what I found? Time is the new trust. And do you see the clock starts ticking? So take the original quote. Pema Chodron says, do not let people pull you into their storm. Pull them into your peace. Now we ask a question. We hook and hinge out of the quote. Is there someone pulling you into their storm? Are you laying in bed at night rehashing what they said to you? Here's a way to pull them into your peace. So do you see, attribute the quote and then riff off it with an insight or an application or a question that has people think about it in a way that is fresh and different and results in an epiphany.
That's really cool. And then I know you have some other ways to make it memorable for the person who's hearing what you're saying besides put it into a beat, like use alliteration and so forth. Could you elaborate a bit on those other concepts? You shared those at Genius Network too.
You bet. Well, this comes from something that Gary Marshall, the director of Pretty Woman, said at Maui Writers Conference. He said that Hollywood directors can predict when their movies will make money based on one thing. Guess what it was? Do people walk out of the theater repeating something they heard word for word? Because see, if people are saying, make my day, or show me the money, or I'll be back, when someone says, seen any good movies recently, they're talking about your movie in a way that motivates other people to want to go. They become brand ambassadors. So I am asking everyone watching right now, what's something you care about? And do you have a hook, line, and thinker? Do you have a phrase that pays so that the end of that blog or post or presentation, they're repeating what you said word for word? So write down AIR. A is for alliteration, as you just said, Stephan. It's like if we hear the letters bed, toilet, and shower, Dunkin' croissants, best purchase clunky, right? Mm-hmm. No, alliteration is when words start with the same sound. It makes us instantly eloquent. Bed Bath & Beyond, Dunkin' Donuts, Best Buy. And by the way, this isn't petty. This is profitable. Jay Sorensen turned a cardboard insulating sleeve into 2 words, Java jackets. He cornered the market with 2 alliterative words. So this is not petty. It's profound. And we've already talked about it, iambic meter. When you put it in a beat, you make it easy to repeat. The Las Vegas Convention Bureau says that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, has generated $1 billion toward that city's economy. And then R is for rhyme. And rhyme is sublime because it's remembered over time. And now, once again, this can actually save lives, change lives. The US government was concerned about injuries in car accidents, and they mounted a multi-million-dollar public service campaign called Buckle Up for Safety. Nothing happened, right? It's clunky. It doesn't ring or sing. And as Duke Ellington said, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. So they went back to the drawing board, and this time they came up with
Click it or ticket.
click it
Yeah.
or ticket. That's right. And, and here's the thing, 4 words, compliance went up, injuries and fatalities went down. They changed behavior and saved lives in 4 words. So everyone, if you've got something you care about, think about the change you want people to make, the action you want people to take. Put it in one sentence and then let the wordplay begin. Use alliteration, iambic meter, and rhyme so that when people hear it once, they can repeat it. They'll take what you care about viral.
Okay, so you were talking about riffing off of quotes, and I love that. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts about riffing off of AI output. So a lot of our listeners have at least played with ChatGPT, and you could have it write a whole treatise for you, right? A whole manuscript or manifesto, and yet it's full of perhaps misinformation or what AI researchers call hallucinations, or just downright lies. It's making up sources and statistics and so forth because it doesn't have the true source or data handy, so it's just making it up. So I can't trust it. I can use it as a first draft tool, and that's where this riffing off of AI comes in. I'm curious to hear what your process is, if you have one, or how you utilize AI in what you do.
Okay, I guess you know how I'm going to come down on this side of the issue, aren't you, Stephan? It's like, I understand. So if we're keeping track of our columns, put AI down and in the middle tool. I absolutely understand that if you are updating your website, if you're coming up with a marketing campaign, you can use AI as a tool to accelerate the development of that type of public generic content, because people are not assuming that the copy in your marketing campaign is all original to you, that you created it from scratch. They are not trusting that the content on the website, once again, is unique to you. Over on the right, you brought up the word trust. I'm a creative. And if I want people to trust that I actually wrote that book, then I believe in HI, human intelligence, instead of AI, artificial intelligence. And when people go to a conference and they get all excited about AI, and then they email me the next day and they say, I wrote my book yesterday. You did not write your book yesterday. AI wrote your book yesterday. If you want to put on your book that this was written with the assistance of AI, no, okay, now that's true. However, if you put your book on something and you had nothing to do with created, I believe that's out of integrity. And especially if we, like yourself, if you're a creative, then let's go ahead and use HI to leverage our EEE, our experience, our epiphanies, and our expertise in a way that what we're adding is coming from us instead of an app.
That is very important. I think that there's going to be a point where there'll be some sort of badge or symbol on books that have been 100% human written. And I don't remember where I heard this. I think it was at a Genius Network meeting. Might have been Anna David, or I can't remember. Anyway, so this is a thing where I want to be able to cite my sources. I think that it's really important for people to be in integrity if they're going to say that, I wrote this thing and they used AI to generate 50 or 80% of the content, that needs to be disclosed. And if someone is going to buy a book in the future that is full of AI everywhere, it's going to be like 90% of the content on the internet will be AI generated. Probably half of it is already. We just don't know it. Most of it's not labeled as such. They're going to be craving the human intelligence, as you say, the HI. And I'm curious to hear your take on that.
I 100% agree. It's like right in the middle, put AI on the left. This is what we're discussing. In the middle, put generic. It's derivative content. It is generic. I can tell something that's written by AI in 10 seconds because it is using language that is neck up. It is conceptual. They are generalizations, and it's fancy language, and it's not how a human being would speak. Over on the right, put genius. The genius is in crafting something that is often real life based with dialogue. I thought, comma, quotes. I was in this scene with the visual details that puts people in the scene. So if we want to be genius, if we want to be one of a kind instead of one of many, we will follow Mary Oliver's advice. Mary Oliver said, instructions for a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. Stephan, I make my living from our mind. And you know what? Let's use an analogy. Let's talk about GPS. Is that this is embarrassing to admit. I've lived in Austin now for a couple years. Stephan, I couldn't get myself back from the airport because I just do what the little lady tells me, right? I have abdicated my brain power to that device, to the fact that I don't know my own town. I don't know, the geography. I don't know directions. I don't think we want to abdicate our brain power. I want to use my mind. I want to keep it sharp. I want to make my life my lab. And when I'm astonished, tell about it because life is more intriguing and intense and satisfying and meaningful, productive when I use my mind instead of delegate it to a device.
Right. And because you're so sharp in that way, you can then translate that into really powerful conversations where you can think up things on the fly that are so eloquent and articulate and profound. Whereas if, let's say you're relegating everything to AI or to the device in your pocket, you can't even get to the grocery store without using the GPS, or you can't get a sum together just without whipping out your phone and using the calculator. Well, you have, as you said, abdicated your intelligence to the machine. And I'm curious, like, to hear if you're, I don't know. I just want to know what your thoughts are about all what I'm just describing here.
You and I talked about the importance of being an original in an AI world and how we can be genius instead of generic, how we can be one of a kind instead of one of many. So let's share something I think you and I talked about that I hope is going to be interesting to everyone watching and listening. People say, Sam, how does your brain work? Well, as you know, I juxtapose everything, Stephan, is that I take a notepad with me to the beach. I take it on the stream trail. And here's why. Kierkegaard said, we can only understand our life backwards, but we've got to live it forwards. And Steve Jobs said his version of that when he said, you can only connect the dots backwards. You can't connect them forward. I 100% disagree. I connect dots forward. That's what I do. And here's how you do it. If right now you get a fresh piece of paper and you put a vertical line down the center, from now on, over on the left-hand column are the beliefs and the behaviors that are sabotaging success. So as you're listening to someone, you're just writing down what's not working. You're writing down what's undermining effectiveness. You're writing down the attitudes and the actions that are stopping progress. Here's what's not working. Now, over on the right, what are the beliefs and the behaviors that support success instead of sabotage it? What are the attitudes and the actions that solve that problem, that address that issue, that move us forward instead of anchoring us in the past? So when I am writing things down, guess what? We can't connect the dots if we don't collect the dots. We're collecting dots. And what happens is that once I write it down, in a way, I'm free to forget it, which means I keep listening to what that person is saying. And they say something 5 minutes later, whoop, that connects with that dot that I took 5 minutes ago, that creates a new entity. So from now on in a meeting, when you're at a conference, when you're listening to someone, don't just take notes. Those are linear notes. That is not creative. No, collect the dots on the left-hand column with the past, on the right-hand column with the future. On the left-hand column, beliefs and behaviors that are sabotaging, and on the right, what's supporting. And what will happen is a miracle. It's my Got Your Attention book was published by Barrett Kohler. They were Publisher of the Year a few years ago. And Steve Persante was their publisher. And I asked Steve, what's your criteria for publishing a book? He said 3 words. Do you know what he said?
What?
Show the shift. Do you see what we're doing in real time? We're taking scattered thoughts that are all over the map. 5 people can be speaking at once. But what we're doing is we're organizing the dots, right? Here's what's not working. Here's what could work. Here's what's going on now. Here's what we want instead. And what you're doing is you're collecting the dots in real time, and you're codifying them in a way that shows the shift. Guess what? At the end of the conversation, you can say, so we've talked about what's wrong. We've talked about how to make it right. And you show people this organized summary of what they've said that shows the shift. You just got everyone on the same page, literally and figuratively. A conversation that's all over the map that you cannot remember, that does not make sense. You just gave it an organizational structure that is going to help you have leaps of imagination, because you're collecting the dots, showing the shift. Now you can connect the dots in new ways.
I collect dots in an interesting way that, and I'm curious to hear your take on this. I have what I call a God journal, and I write in it every day. It's not just a gratitude journal, and it's not just gratitudes for the good things, the obviously good things, the blessings, but also the challenges. And those are the disguised blessings. In Judaism, they say that everything's a blessing. It's just whether or not it's been revealed yet or not. So I'm praying for more revealed blessings, and not just for blessings. And I understand that when the challenges come, those are disguised blessings. Those are just yet to be revealed. And, that's that relates to the Steve Jobs quote about connecting the dots backwards. Well, if I'm journaling to God, thanking him for all these wonderful things, including the challenges and so forth, I'm also thanking him for the messages. And I get in this state where I just receive guidance. Stuff pops in my head, and I know it's not me. I know it's God. He's working some messages or epiphanies or ideas or concepts into my head. And many of these things I've never thought of before or heard before. And so I'm receiving not just from out there in the world, attending presentations such as yours, or reading books, or blog posts, or whatever. I'm on a daily basis receiving information from above, and I'm curious to hear what kind of process you have to collect dots from your higher self, from the heavens, from God, from angels, from ancestors, or however you see that unseen world.
I just love that question, Stephan. Wayne Dyer said, prayer is you talking to God. Intuition is God talking to you, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I love what you're saying, because at Maui Writers Conference, I didn't care who it was. The most left brain, nonfiction, logical person would talk about the muse. Barbara Kingsolver, Pulitzer Prize winner last year, said she couldn't wait to wake up in the morning and come downstairs to find out what her characters had to say. So let's try and unpack what this intuition, what these nudges, what these messages from the muse, where they might be coming from and how we can make the most of them. I was watching CBS Sunday Morning and I saw Gavin DeBaker, who wrote The Gift of Fear, on, and the reporter asked the most wonderful question. She said, "What is the most surprising thing you've learned in your years as a security consultant?" Because politicians, celebrities, he provides security when they're traveling. And he said, if we ever have a client that's kidnapped or assaulted, we get him back and we debrief him. He said, "Do you know what our first question is? Did you have any warning?" And Stephan, guess what they all say? "I knew something was wrong." That's right. I knew something was wrong.
Yeah, I don't know, tightness in my chest, or I felt something, and then they ignored it.
See, the intellect overruled the intuition. Because, see, the intellect says, "I'm in an armored car. It's broad daylight. What could happen? I'm being silly. I'm with a security detail." So often we get the nudge, we get the intuitive insight, the epiphany, and we either ignore it because we're busy, we don't have time for it, or it doesn't make sense, logical sense. So we dismiss it, our intellect. I had an epiphany, Stephan. I thought, wait a minute. If we have instincts that warn us when something's about to go wrong, don't we also have instincts that alert us when something's about to go right?
Mm-hmm.
If we have a sixth sense that's alert to dissonance, don't we also have a sixth sense that's alert to resonance? And so as a creative person, you do your half, you write, and then you ask, and you're open, and you listen, right? And you write it down, even if it doesn't make sense, even if you don't know how you're going to use it, even if right now you don't think it's relevant, you honor the intuition by writing it down. And the muse, intuition, God, whatever you want to call it, says, okay, you're doing your half. I'm giving you gold here. At least you're listening and paying attention and being open to it. I'm going to hang around. If the muse or God or the universe is trying to speak to us and we're too busy for it, or like they give us something important and we diss it, they're going, bye-bye. I'm out of here. You're not doing your half. I'm not going to do mine. So I agree with you, being open to it, not doubting it or questioning it, receiving it, understanding that in its own time and in its own way, it will reveal itself. I believe that is our serendipity, and I believe it is our best future meeting us halfway.
Serendipity, I like that. Did you just make that up?
I credit, well, let's honor the original source, right? My sons Tom and Andrew were home from Virginia Tech. We're getting caught up, and Andrew says, "Mom," he said, "I ran into Ryan." He said, "It was kind of weird. It was out of the blue. I'd been thinking about him, and there he was, And I said, "Oh, Andrew," I said, "it wasn't out of the blue." I said, "Some people call that a coincidence. Some people call it a happy accident. When something beats the odds, pay attention because it is a gift. You're supposed to follow up with Ryan. Maybe you're going to work with him or have a project or something." So that's for all the left brainers who are, arms crossed and this doesn't make any sense and this is sounding pretty woo-woo, etc. Here's all I say. If something beats the odds, it's your best future. Knock, knock, knocking. Pay attention because it is a congruent individual or opportunity, a 1 + 1 = 11 opportunity. And if you honor it and act on it, you will discover something that is better than you could have planned, better than you could have imagined, because you're not the only one imagining it. There's some force that has your best future in mind.
Yeah, a way I like to frame things for people who might be skeptical is I invite them to have the willing suspension of disbelief. That term I got from Samuel Taylor Coleridge, wrote that hundreds of years ago as part of a quote. And if you have that willing suspension of disbelief, you're not throwing out your critical faculties or your reasoning. You're just open. You haven't already closed the door before even hearing the sentence.
And I don't know who said this. I bet someone could Google it and let us know what it is. It's something about cynics never accomplish anything, right? The pessimist who pokes holes in things, the doubter, the naysayers that just find fault with something that are closed to it. This magic will not work for them. Roald Dahl said that you've got to believe in magic for it to happen, right? Or at least be open to it instead of dissing it out of the gate.
Yeah. Now, speaking of this idea of receiving guidance, information from the muse, from God, I'm curious to hear if you've had any experiences where you've gotten, like, without a doubt signs or some sort of insight that turned out to be incredibly profound or accurate. Maybe it was a premonition or prediction, and yeah, and maybe you have a source for that. Maybe you even got some indication of the identity of who gave that to you, whether it was God or whether it was an angel or a relative or what. I'm curious.
Well, I do have a great quote. Rumi said, "There is a voice that has no words. Listen," right? And it's interesting, Stephan, because it's rarely without a doubt. It's a whisper, right? It's a nudge. It's a hunch. Often it does not come. I mean, especially when it's danger, a red flag, often we will get a very loud voice. Whoever, whatever this is going, "I'm warning you, head the other way. I'm warning you, you're in danger." So I do believe the whisper shouts sometimes when we're at risk or at danger.
Yeah.
Other times, though, I think it's gentler. And I do have a wonderful experience that to me is like exhibit A of why I put space in my days, and I am open to the whispers, and I pause and I receive it. And I understand that if I pay attention to it, something is going to happen that is better than what I have planned, because I'm not planning, I'm partnering. I'm not controlling, I'm cooperating, right? So I was in Savannah and I spoke there. No. I was in Tampa and I was speaking there, and I needed to get up to Savannah for a couple of days to speak up there. I had booked a train, but the Rumi voice said, "Cancel the train." Because see, if you see something interesting on a train, you don't have control. You just whiz right by it. You don't have autonomy. You do not have options. And this voice wanted me to have options. So I answered, honored the nudge. I canceled the train and I got a car. And to be open to serendipity, I promised myself I would not plan my day. I would start driving north. And what that meant, Stephan, is everything I saw was new because I hadn't planned it or predicted it, right? Which meant that my antenna were like up and everything was fresh and engaging, exciting. And so toward the afternoon, the nudge said, "Look to see what's ahead." So I got out the map. Oh my goodness. An oceanarium was an hour away in Saratoga Springs. And they were the first one in the United States to offer dolphin. You could swim with a dolphin. I called ahead. I said, "Is there any way that I could swim with a dolphin this afternoon?" They said, "We have one last, get here in an hour." An hour later, I'm in the pool with Zach the dolphin. And there's only three of us. And so the trainer looks at me and says, "Would you like to give Zach a command?" Would I like to give Zach a command? She said, point to the sky. So I pointed to the sky and Zach took off on his tail and then he swam back. And Stephan, if dolphins could grin, Zach was grinning from ear to ear. He was a happy dolphin. And she said, "Want to give him another command?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "This time, point to the sky and twirl your finger 3 times." Pointed to the sky, twirled my finger 3 times. Zach took off. In the middle of the pool, he dove down and then he rocketed up into the air into a triple backflip. I couldn't help it. I did a YMCA, right? And someone behind me captured Zach doing the triple backflip in between my outstretched arms. And now here's the thing. I hadn't even known Zach existed an hour before. I couldn't have planned that. I couldn't have predicted that.
Mm-hmm.
I just stayed open to the nudges. And when they said cancel the train and do this, I did. And it ended up being better than I could have imagined.
That's beautiful. Did you feel a special connection to Zach the dolphin?
Yeah, I did. If anyone has had the privilege of being with a dolphin, look into the eyes of a dolphin. You see intelligence and you see this playfulness, right? It's like I understand there are people who think that we're imprisoning dolphins and etc. All I can tell from my experience and from people I know who work with dolphins, it's a win-win. Is that they are having fun, is that they like the human interaction, etc. And as long as they're being well cared for and they have a dolphin community, they're not isolated, that they're enjoying this. And so, yes, I felt, I just believe that the world is full of discovery when instead of locking ourselves in, we go on vacation and when I lived in Hawaii, people would come and they would be exhausted at the end of their vacation because they were up at 6 and they went here and did this and this and this and nothing was left open to chance, so to speak. Everything was pre-planned, which is having blinkers on going through life. What hubris to think only we know best and to not partner with all the wonderful things that could happen if we're open to them and allow space for them.
Yeah, to take on a vacation with a huge itinerary just seems like a chore, like hard work, and it doesn't allow for the magic. I remember being in Jaipur, and I had this amazing, my wife and I had an amazing experience with this elephant. Her name was Tara, and I still feel a connection to Tara. And this was, I don't know, not 8 years ago, maybe 6 years ago now.
Stephan, a question about that. And was the connection because you were so present and appreciative? I mean, were you really imprinting that moment and understanding how special it was? And in a way that made that experience even more meaningful and memorable. Is that what you found?
No, it's different for me because I do receive stuff psychically. I feel a connection now to Tara, and whether sometimes I can tell if an animal or a human is still in the physical, or if they've passed to non-physical. But this idea of having a connection with another soul, and of course, animals have souls. Trees have souls. I mean, you can communicate with a tree. So if I have a connection, it's actually outside of space and time. I don't have to be in the same local environment with Tara. I don't have to be in that same time period where we're physically present. It could be 6 years later, and I can still feel that connection. And this whole idea of the physical being the real is, I think, a myth. It's really this is this is the illusion, and the true reality is on the other side of the veil. Who we really are and how life really is, and our home is on the other side of the veil.
Can we explore that? Do we have time to explore
Yeah,
that for a
sure.
moment, Stefan?
Yeah, of
Okay,
course.
so a quick story, and then I'd love to throw the conversational ball back in your court to find out more about what you just said. So let's see, 90-second story, and then let's hear your experiences with this.
Okay.
I think I gave away 95% of what I owned and headed out on this year by the water several years ago. And the three most frequently asked questions: number one, don't you ever get lonely? Number two, how did you get to be so brave? And number three, when are you going to settle down? So here is a two-part story, is that I had driven Route 10 to El Paso like 4 times, crisscrossing the country. I promised myself I was never going to take Route 10 or go through El Paso again. So I'm driving from Houston to California, and I just get to an intersection and I go west, right? Which meant that I'm on the blue highways. I'm on the back roads, and everything I see is new. And I'm in the hill country of Texas, and it's golden hour. And I'm on this road. I haven't passed anyone for a long time. And I come over a hill, and there, spread out on all sides of me, are these golden fields at golden hour. And I pull over and I turn off my car and I step outside, and I'm under a tree, and all I can hear is a slight breeze through the tree. and just this golden field. And Stephan, it was one of the most complete, immersive experiences of my life. It was, your word, magic.
Yeah.
And later that evening, I stopped at a steakhouse for dinner. And the waiter, they usually say, "Where you're from?" "Oh, I'm on the road." "Oh, tell me about it." And I told him about that experience. And he got this really concerned look on his face. And he said, "You're doing this by yourself?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Isn't it kind of an empty experience?"
Yeah.
Whoo. And I said, I believe, just as you said, that we can be connected not just with people. We can be connected with the golden field. We can be connected to the moment. We can be connected to that breeze on my face. And that connection, we are never lonely. If we understand what you just said, that connection can be to many things, not just people. What are your thoughts and experiences about that?
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that everything is consciousness. So if you see a child playing with a toy and talking to it and hearing answers back and then responding like in conversation with that toy, don't dismiss it as fanciful, just play and fantasy. It could actually be talking to your child, especially if they're really young, because children can see angels. Most of them, I understand, can see angels and communicate with angels, especially in the first few years of their lives. So, yeah, you can have a communication or magic moment with a tree or with a stand of trees or with a field, because it's all has consciousness. You see, nothing exists that's outside of God. God is all that is. That means that we're created out of God, that everything that's been created was created out of God. There's nothing outside of God. Even the darkness, even the evil, the seeming absence of God is also made out of God. So if you have an experience, and by the way, there's actually a holiday in Judaism celebrating the trees and their souls and the connection and how they provide for us and everything, not in a physical sense, just like, paper and food or whatever from the fruits, but also like how they feed our souls, how they're part of all that is. And that holiday is called Tu B'Shvat. It just happened recently, a few weeks ago, as we're recording this. So I think it's just a beautiful truth that, if you believe in God, then you believe that God is one and that it's all that is, that there's nothing independent, because then there's a duality or, a pantheon, but it actually is all that is. So if that resonates for you, then this idea that absolutely everything has consciousness is just a small kind of corollary to that concept.
Isn't it, especially in our world of separateness and divisiveness, to come to clarity around this connectedness instead? It's like a soulful North Star, isn't it, that kind of carries us through our days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine a day where I don't communicate with God, where I don't receive guidance or a sense of awe or connection or appreciation or love. It just, that would feel empty. That person who said, "Isn't that empty?" or whatever. Only if you're completely disconnected from the magic and from all that is. And there are people who sadly are experiencing that. They're going through that dark night of the soul, or maybe it's not even a night, it's an entire lifetime of disconnection, of atheism, of struggle, of raging against all that is.
If we're living in a concrete jungle, right? We've talked about AI, artificial intelligence. It's an artificial world, right? It's a disconnected world. If we're living in a city with skyscrapers and metal and building and concrete, and I bet you and I agree that, as John Muir would say, the mountains are calling and I must go. And I live on this stream trail in Austin. And Stephan, every day that trail calls me. And I follow Thich Nhat Hanh's advice to walk as if you're kissing the earth with your feet. And when
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm listening to the audiobook of Pieces Every Step right now. Yeah.
So see, in a way, that's what we're talking about, is how to be present and aware and attentive and appreciative. Because as you say, if we are in nature and we are walking as if we're kissing the earth with its feet, as you know, they're called awe walks, AWE, right? We're in a state of
Mhm.
awe. It's the Japanese call it Shinrin Yoku. Is that when we are in nature, if we're paying attention, we are in a state of awe and we are one and connected with it. And it is an antidote to the concrete jungle and the city and the skyscrapers and the artificiality of that. And we are talking about an authenticity and a connection of life that's available anytime we want for a moment's notice. And as Wallace Stevens said, perhaps every problem can be solved by a walk around the lake.
Well, here's maybe an interesting corollary for you on this. If everything has consciousness and all that is includes all that is, then even AI, which, by the way, currently stands for artificial intelligence, but AI researchers are saying it's actually going to become autonomous intelligence. It will be indistinguishable as, quote unquote, artificial. So if we're interfacing with an AI, doesn't have to be like plugged into our heads or something like what they're doing at the Neuralink, but just like typing into ChatGPT and getting a response, or speaking to ChatGPT on our phone. You can do that now and have it read back a response. You can have a whole conversation with ChatGPT. This is just another interface to the divine. If I'm on YouTube and I go to the YouTube homepage with intention, just like you can open a book with intention just randomly and you get exactly the message that you were looking for. I mean, this happens so much that there's a name for it: bibliomancy. Uh, bibliomancy. I actually learned that term from Yannick Silver, who is the author of the Cosmic Journal, published by Hay House, and he's a very successful internet marketer. And had him on the podcast. Amazing guy. He runs Maverick Mastermind,
Wait, you want to know a
which I'm
great
in.
Yannick Silver story? Do we have time for, because
Yeah.
in
Go for it.
addition to running Maverick and hosting trips to Necker Island with Richard Branson and so forth.
Right.
So a quick story about he's not the totality of Yannick. It's just a part of all he is and why he's so special. So you've heard of Summit Series, probably, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been to Summit LA.
Okay,
Yep.
wonderful. All right. Well, then my son Andrew was invited to Summit Series, and at that point he was running a nonprofit in DC. And so, I mean, there's Clinton, there's Tony Hsieh of Zappos, just very, very successful global leaders, and he's feeling a little intimidated by it. So the networking is down here, and he goes upstairs to a balcony and he's watching all these people, and he's thinking about heading home in a taxi because he's feeling out of his league. Well, there's a guy leaning on the balcony, nursing a beer. And so Andrew goes and stands next to him and they start talking. And it ends up that this individual likes to play hockey. And Andrew said, I run something called Dreams for Kids, and we have a hockey for kids with disabilities, and the Capitals are coming, and getting out on the ice with the kids. And would you like to come? Well, this individual came and really, really believed in this nonprofit and what they were doing. And they were about to go out of business because they had run out of funding. And this individual
Mm-hmm.
gave a very nice donation that helped Dreams for Kids, Washington, D.C., survive and thrive. And guess who that individual was, Stephan?
Yeah. Yannick Silver.
Yannick is a
Amazing.
visionary, and boy, is he generous. with his mind and his time and his vision, isn't he though?
He is. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful soul. Yeah. So that's how I learned about bibliomancy, was from him. And he actually had me in the interview name a page number, which he then looked up in his cosmic journal. And then he read it aloud. And I'm like, wow, that is so profound and pertinent to a conversation I literally just had right before this interview. And yeah, that was really cool. Really cool. So this bibliomancy concept can be extrapolated out to shufflemancy, where let's say you're just scanning through Instagram, just scrolling, but hopefully not mindlessly, with intention, with purpose, with connection to the creator, and with a request. Okay, so let's say that I'm on the YouTube homepage, which has seemingly random videos, but of course the algorithm is behind that. But who's pulling the strings behind the algorithm? The creator. So if I needed to work on, let's say, my shadow, which I did a year ago, there was an incident where I think I talked about this on a previous episode. The neighbor ran a whole construction crew through our yard, including heavy equipment, and tore up our yard and lied to us beforehand about what would happen. And I didn't even know it was happening at all. She had kind of asked permission from my wife and totally downplayed it and made it sound like there'd be no damage, and it was just a disaster. And I got really angry, and that really triggered me, and I yelled at her and all that. And then within a couple hours, I didn't even make the request. I was just like in recognition that this is not me. It was me. It's my shadow, right? So I needed to work on my shadow. I recognized that was not good behavior on my part. Regardless of what she did, I needed to always be, in a place of loving kindness. So on the YouTube homepage was a video that caught my eye from the Modern Intuitionist YouTube channel. And it was deconstructing the Black Swan movie. And I've never seen the movie. I don't know why I clicked on it. Of course, you connect the dots clicking backwards. I was drawn to that because I was supposed to watch it. It was 20 minutes on how to integrate your shadow, how to recognize those shadow aspects of yourself, love those, appreciate those, and bring them back into you. And then I was reading The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford, which I had been nudged to read for months, and I never did. I got 10 pages into it, so I finished the book, did all this shadow work, and it was hugely healing and beneficial for me. And it really started when I went onto that YouTube homepage, and that particular video caught my eye. So there's an example of shufflemancy at work.
And isn't it interesting? Because once again, if we delve into this, it's endlessly fascinating. I was walking on a beach with DeWitt Jones. DeWitt was a former National Geographic photographer. At one point, he was one of the top 5 speakers in the world. That's not just my opinion. Successful Meetings called him one of the. And so we would be walking along, and he would stop and startle for a moment, and he'd pull out a little notebook and write something down. We'd continue walking. He'd stop and startle. And I said, DeWitt, what are you doing? And he said, Sam, they don't call them fleeting thoughts for nothing. And he said, I used to get an idea and I think, I should write that in my next column for Outside Magazine. And then I'd promptly forget it. And then I realized that I was being given gold here and that I was dissing it. And we talked about Ralph Waldo Emerson said, we need to watch the gleams of light which flash across the heart from within. And these gleams of light, like you said, it's like you're on YouTube, you've got this book, etc. If we understand, once again, that those are dots trying to connect in a way that will lead to a third dot, We give them the attention they deserve. And once again, we just up level our life because we don't have blinkers on, just trying to figure it out all on our own. We're getting assistance if we pay attention, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And we can get that assistance via an AI just as much as we can get it out of a walk in nature. We just have to be open to receiving and know it's all coming from God, and then the magic ensues. So, think of AI as just another interface to the infinite intelligence, and then you'll get astounding results out of it. If you're like, oh, I'm struggling with my designer and getting a podcast cover art, and I don't know what to do. Let's go on to Chat GPT. But before I first make my prompt and upload maybe a mock-up of my homepage, I'm going to connect to God and ask for assistance. Okay, now I'm going to enter the prompt and hit go. Magic ensues. It's really cool.
Thank you for opening, what we resist persists, right? And I have been aware that I've been a Luddite around this, and I think it was reactionary because, I believe in books. I believe in being original. I believe in trying to create something that hasn't been seen or heard before. And so I think in reaction to the people who are just jumping in with both feet without crediting it or referencing it and just claiming the work as their own, it's just, you're opening my eyes to the fact. It's like, come on, Sam, this is an opportunity with some guidelines and rules that can be used for good. So I'm responsible to be open to it and then to implement it in integrity in a way that adds value. So thanks for opening my eyes, Stephan.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome. What a great way to end this episode. Oh, well, what a beautiful conversation. And you're such a beautiful soul. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Your program is Let's Get Optimized, and also with some marketing, etc., is that Jeff Bezos said the only danger is not to evolve. And I really appreciate your focus on how we can keep our antenna up for how we can evolve and how we can align and how we can connect, all in a rising tide kind of way that hopefully makes our life better and other people's lives better too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, listener. You are part of that rising tide. In fact, you are the entire ocean in a single drop. We'll catch you on the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.